Emma Sue and I have been working together on CPD initiatives for around a year and a half, and we're very happy to be here today to share some of our experiences and activities with you. Okay, so what are we going to do today? First of all, we're going to look at what CPD is. I don't think we'll need to spend too long on that. It's been a theme of the conference so far. Secondly, we're going to think a little bit about why it's so important, particularly in our context in India and South Asia. We're going to move on to looking at a new initiative that we launched by the British Council, from the British Council this week, the new CPD framework for India. And we're going to move into some of the possible barriers and solutions that you might face in implementing CPD in your own context, and share with you some of the ways that the British Council tries to address these through the work that we do with the state governments that we work with across the country. So I'm going to hand over to Emma Sue, who's going to kick us off with the very first part of the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our workshop. We're being innovative, and we've got off the stage and off the podium and down with you. So, first activity is for you to think of one word, only one word, that for you describes your own CPD. And we'd like you to take some time now to think of that one word, write it down.
Okay, sir.
And then
can we have the slide on, please?
To exchange that with somebody else next to you, which means you can talk to each other. Are you ready? Yes, the answer is always yes. Yes, it is. Has everyone got one word? Okay, so we'd like to hear back from you what you've got from some of you.
It's an interesting one here.
My word is I'm thirsty. Thirsty.
Thirsty. Thirsty. Great word.
One word which reflects my personality is flexibility. Flexibility.
Great, flexibility.
Education is.
Thank you. In the red shirt?
Upgradation.
Okay, upgradation. Yep. One more here.
Equipped.
There's a gentleman in the red turban at the back. Yeah.
Ability.
Okay. One more here at the front.
Innovative, continuous learning. Continuous learning.
Okay, one here. The lady waving there.
Rewarding. And my friends, sporadic.
Okay, that's interesting. Should we show them some of the other?
So we asked some people at the conference and on Twitter how they would describe. And this is what they said, and this is who they were. They have ongoing, varied, bitty, research-driven, empowering, people-focused. Well, that's 2 words.
Okay, so moving on, let's have a think about what CPD actually is. And we want to play a very short film for you, just a 2.5-minute film, that tells you what we believe CPD really is for teachers and educators. While you watch, we would like you to do something. We'd like you to try and write down all of the different ways that are recommended, the different methods you can use for accessing CPD. Okay? Are you ready? Can we have the sound, please? Sound? Okay, it's technology again. Hold on. We'll fix it.
Or attending a teacher's conference on a subject of interest. Or observing other teachers teaching. Hello, thank you for choosing this video from the British Council. This video is about CPD. CPD stands for Continuing Professional Development, and it's all about choosing and taking advantage of learning opportunities. For example, for English language teachers, it could be joining a reading circle to learn more about a particular teaching technique, or keeping a journal about what went well in a lesson, or attending a teacher's conference on a subject of interest, or observing other teachers teaching, or simply sharing experiences with colleagues. In fact, there are many different kinds of development activities that are part of CPD. CPD is a very powerful way for teachers to develop professionally because it puts them in control. This means that teachers are able to choose what and how they learn. In order to help teachers and the institutions they work at to identify and make the most of CPD opportunities, the British Council has developed a CPD framework specifically for teachers in India, along with a number of tools that make it easier to use the CPD framework. The framework is easy to understand. There are different teacher profiles, which are determined by experience, qualifications, and professional background in general. And these profiles match suitable types of professional development opportunities, which in turn match available resources. For example, a teacher at the start of her career might value the opportunity to observe other teachers teach, and therefore want to find videos showing classroom teaching. The CPD framework helps teachers to find these resources. A very experienced teacher might want to develop mentoring skills and would like to take an online mentoring course. The CPD framework shows where to find this course. So for both these types of teacher, and for all the teacher profiles in between, the framework is a simple way of helping teachers develop by showing them suitable things they can do and what resources are available to do them. The framework doesn't just identify individual learning opportunities, it also helps teachers to plan a career path. By identifying suitable resources for particular stages of their career, enabling them to build up skills and knowledge and gain qualifications over time. The framework is also really useful for institutions who want to introduce an agreed, sustainable, and formalized professional development program. A program that will help teachers develop the skills and knowledge to meet the needs of their students. This will be good for teachers, their students, and for the institution as a whole, showing a commitment to providing a quality education now and in the future. For more information about CPD and the CPD framework, visit www.britishcouncil.in. Thank you for viewing this video from the British Council.
Okay, she said it for me. Thank you very much. What about you, Emma Sue? What kind of professional development do you do?
That's a very good question, Alison, because I don't have a lot of time for CPD. lots and lots of other commitments and things that are going on. But I think I see professional development very much as an ongoing practice, and it's very closely connected with personal development. And anyone who knows me knows that that's something very close to my heart. So my own personal development, I think writing a book has been part of that, because that was a bit scary. I'm currently designing some training to go with it, which is also scary. So I think it's important to widen the comfort zone and keep doing things that take you out of your comfort zone. But also little things, like I try to make time to watch videos on TED or some of these Harvard online lectures, and also daily reflection, I think, which is just part of something that I do anyway. So it's a combination of things. How about you, Alison?
Very similar, but I think my CPD tends to revolve a lot around reading. I am very interested in reading evaluation reports, documents, reviews, articles, research articles, and discussing those and the findings from those with my colleagues. So trying to make time to share the information from those articles and to kind of discuss the implications of that with colleagues. So that's something that I like to do. Don't find much time though with 2 children at home and a demanding husband, but yes, yeah, that's what I like to do. How about you? Is there anything that you like to do to improve your own CPD? Have a think about the examples given on the video, and just for a couple of minutes, just share with the person next to you what kind of things you do to enhance your own CPD. Okay, just a couple of minutes. Please discuss with each other so we can wander around and listen in. Okay, would anyone like to share with the group what kind of things they do? Yep, there's some hands up over there with the red and black, yep.
Hello, I'm Mahesh from Maharashtra, India. In regards with CPD, I, along with my other teachers and colleagues, we are a part of training and this conference as a CPD for us. Besides this, I was a part of webinar also conducted by Macmillan recently, and such things we do quite often attend. That's a part of CPD for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Webinars and trainings and conferences. Okay, anyone else? The lady, okay, gentleman in the red.
Hello. It's Rahul RMSA from Maharashtra. The very simple thing I would like to put, be a good student for your CPD.
Thank you, good advice. There's a lady in the front with the green top.
Yeah, I'm Shrutapa from West Bengal. I continuously keep in touch with the British Council. I'm a member and I do a lot of reading. And the second thing that I do is keep in connection with my teachers at EFL-U. I have been a student there. So I continuously get help from them through mail, and I keep coming to Hyderabad for any reason to disturb them quite often. So
okay,
that's
thank
how.
you. Gentleman in the front here, Mr. Joshi.
Hello everyone, I am Narayan Joshi, Joint Director from Maharashtra. I keep meetings with teachers and senior officers of the education department. Also, I keep meeting with British Council and other non-government organizations also. I believe that nobody can progress in isolation, so I require help from you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. One more lady in the blue, and then we'll move on.
Hello everyone, I'm Rosie Mehta, working as a master trainer with the project PLT. We all take help of reading, using multimedia, websites, seminars, workshops, everything. I want to simplify the thing from as far as my CPD is concerned. I focus a lot on my failures. When I train my trainees and when I teach my students, I do reflect a lot. Because failures give you a way to your professional development. They do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
hello. Thank you for choosing this video from the British Council.
Okay, why is CPD so important? Now, in the Indian context, I love this picture. This was created by Professor Kirti Kapoor from the National Council for Educational Research and Training, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And Professor Kirti Kapoor represented CPD in two ways, I think, on this poster. It's a journey taken by an individual. We heard that this morning from Rama. We take responsibility for that journey ourselves. And it's leading us towards a destination. And that destination, we have to remember, is our students or our trainee teachers, if we're teacher educators. So everything that we do, our professional development, we may get an immense amount of personal satisfaction from doing it, but the ultimate goal, the ultimate aim is for us to be better and to provide a better experience, better results for our students and for our trainee teachers. So I think in the Indian context, where enrolment in recent years has exceeded 90% at 1.4 million government schools across the country, staggering numbers, what the focus now is, the government and all of us, I think, are focusing on is how can we improve the quality of the learning experience for our students and our teachers. And CPD is a very clear, powerful, positive route to that. So I think that's something we have to remember. Emma Sue, do you want to talk a bit about...
May I add about the collaboration?
Thank you very much. A very important point. You've got people walking together on that journey, holding hands and helping each other on the way. Thank you.
I wanted just to allude back to what Simon Hall was saying yesterday in terms of CPD and how it related to action research. And he was talking about it being ongoing, inexpensive, tailored, practical, productive, and owned. And action research, classroom research is a very good way of doing that. But also, I think this relates as well to having I think everything is rooted in self-awareness and understanding yourself and the confidence that then builds so that you actually do want to go out and develop yourself. So I think that's very, very key. CPD can be free. It doesn't have to cost anything at all, and there are lots of opportunities all around, not just training and courses, also very important, but not just those opportunities, lots of other opportunities, and reflection, for example, can be very, very quick. It doesn't have to be something that takes a long time. Sorry, I think I'm losing my voice a little bit. I'm talking too much.
Okay. We also looked at what kind of CPD has the most impact and makes the most difference to teachers. We looked at this survey done by Catherine Walter and Jessica Briggs in 2012, and they reviewed hundreds of studies of different types of professional development, English language programs for teachers, and identified through the findings of those different studies what kind of CPD makes the most difference to teachers. And I think this is quite an interesting checklist to add to what Simon Borg was saying yesterday, and I think it also reinforces what Rama Matthew was saying in her plenary this morning. Concrete and classroom-based. So centred on the classroom, not outside or on relevant to the classroom experience. Bringing in expertise from outside the school, if necessary. That's an interesting one, I think, because often we think that we have to focus on the expertise from within the school, but we need support, teachers and educators, I myself, we need support from other people through collaboration to help us find answers to challenges and questions that we might have about our teaching and our practice. Involving teachers, making sure that it's need-based, relevant, suitable, appropriate for them, helping them work together, opportunities for mentoring and coaching. How many of you have been mentored or coached in your careers? Yeah? Not enough of us, actually, but I hope you probably would find, if you think back through your career, think about the different points in your career where you actually developed or improved in some way, and I bet there was somebody there, either advising you, guiding you, leading you to whatever it was that led to your development. So there's usually someone who helps you, who mediates that development in some way, I find. Sustained, so not just a one-off. One of the challenges of training as CPD is that you go into the training room, you do your training, you go back to your classroom, you forget all about it, close the door, and do what you did before. So it needs to be sustainable. And then supported by your institutional leader, by your principal, your head teacher, somebody working in the school who is responsible for your development. So that support is absolutely invaluable.
Sir, ceiling inga bright aithe better emonandi leak avutundi like central ange head notes.
So MSU has been working with us since late 2011 on a project to help the British Council adapt our global CPD framework and to embed more CPD approaches into the work that we do across our projects in India. So she's going to tell us a little bit about the process that she's been through over the last couple of years.
Thank you. So this was a very, very big project and quite all-consuming and really interesting and challenging. And it started off with really trying to understand the typical Indian teacher profile and what the needs were, what the competencies were of Indian teachers of English. And once that had been identified, I then reviewed loads and loads of courses and projects that have been taking place throughout India over a 5-year period. There have been lots and lots of things happening, master trainer programs, cascade programs, all kinds of projects and teacher development projects. And I reviewed all of those to look to see where there were gaps and where teacher needs could perhaps be met in a different way, or could be where things could be perhaps more streamlined as well. And that was also looking at existing policies in terms of CPD and in terms of what teachers really needed for their own development. And then all those courses and projects that I reviewed, I then mapped them to the, at that time, the British Council standard CPD framework, again to identify where the gaps were and to come up with a profile that was more specific to the Indian context, because there were certain things that just didn't fit the standard kind of framework, and it's quite difficult to kind of stuff things into a framework. And out of that came some recommendations and some actions for going forward, and that was to look at, to try to come up with an India-specific CPD framework, one which really identified what the teachers' needs were and where they might be on that framework, and what kind of activities would be best suited in that context. And that included suitable certification and suitable kinds of activities that would be accessible and easy to use, easy to manage, and fit lots and lots of different types of contexts. So this framework was developed, and there was quite a long period of consultation and workshops and getting lots and lots of different views on board to create this framework. We then realised and discovered that it couldn't be a nice little, neat little framework, because it was very sort of done by level. You know, you're here, level 1, level 2, level 3. And actually, as we've seen from what you've said and what we've been hearing, CPD isn't actually like that. CPD happens in different ways and at different points in your career. And it's something that's happening. You don't just sort of move up a level and you get to that certain level and that's it. You've done your CPD. And likewise, you might have strengths in some areas and other areas where you need to improve. So it's not a linear process. So, here it is. So this is the framework which has come out of all that work. And as you can see, it's not a box as such. It's a more organic kind of process. And what we have here are competencies for the teacher, but in addition, we've got things that fit the Indian context. So we've got things like language proficiency and qualifications and ELT qualifications, because those things were extremely varied in the Indian context. People didn't just go through a kind of linear process to become qualified. And we also added in taking responsibility for professional development as something which the teacher could start to do. Now, it's difficult to see from we've got copies of this, and you should have one in your pack as well.
So just to move on, just to reinforce what Emma-Sue was saying, that the 3 areas we added were using inclusive practices. In India specifically, there are very clear goals in the national curriculum framework around inclusivity, equity, providing access to girls, to people from different communities, different language groups, different abilities, to ensure that everyone participates democratically in the classroom process. So we've added that as a very explicit competence on the India framework. We also added using multilingual approaches. I'm sure many of you are confronted with classrooms of children who speak a huge range of different languages. You yourself may not even speak the first language of many of the children in your classrooms. You may not speak the language of many of the teachers that you're training in your training rooms. So what can you do as a teacher educator or as a teacher to ensure that you are catering to that kind of context? And we wanted to make that very explicit on the framework as well. And I think to reinforce what Emma-Sue was saying about taking responsibility, going back to what Rama Matthew was saying again this morning, around motivation and helping teachers think through the kinds of professional behaviours that are appropriate for them, to be role modelling behaviours in the classroom, to be punctual. We know that 25% of teachers at any one time in India are not even in a school. So how can we try and encourage a more professional approach to teaching and learning through this framework? So these things we felt were very, very important for the context that we're working in here. So what we'd like you to do now is, if you have a framework, you should have the red copy of this framework in your bag. If you don't have one, put your hand up, we'll pass them around. And there's a small task we'd like you to do. So perhaps Emma-Sue could... Yeah, thank you. Here's some... Thank you. So, the task is... Emma-Sue, do you want to...
Yes, so what we'd like you to do is to, as a first step, we'd like you to...
Can we have the slide on, please?
We'd like you to look at the list of professional behaviours that are going round that circle. And the first step is to discuss what each one means.
Does anyone else need?
There you go, one between two. One between two.
If you want one afterwards, please go to the British Council stall, but make sure you sit now next to somebody who has one for the purposes of this session.
So if we think about this as the very first step is awareness, so that very initial step is awareness, before you can actually start thinking about professional development. So we'd like you to look at that list and just come to an understanding of what each one of those means.
Please feel free to, again, to discuss that with the people sitting next to you. Okay, are any of those behaviours unclear? No? Okay. Should we move on to step 2? Yes. Could we have a microphone there, the lady in black? She has a question.
Sorry to stop you. Yes. I just wanted to know about the understanding learners part of it. I meant to ask you yesterday, I didn't get around to doing it. Could you just explain a little bit more about what you mean by understanding learners?
Right. Essentially, this is around understanding what your learners' needs are, what their linguistic needs are, what their current level is in terms of their ability, understanding their maybe their personal circumstances, their language background, things relating to their ability to learn or not learn. Students might be coming late to school for no fault of their own. It may be because they have to support the family in their home before they come to school, maybe that they have to walk to school. So essentially all of those kind of things. Each one of these behaviours has a set of descriptors that goes with it that you would be able to access on our website, or we will be able to send them to you afterwards. So that would help. Yes, there's another question there.
Here it's saying, hello, good afternoon everybody. Here it's saying it's integrating ICT. Can you tell me what ICT is?
Yeah. So ICT in an Indian classroom could be, for example, one media projector that's used in a classroom. It could be a computer lab. Many of the primary schools in Maharashtra, for example, now have a computer lab attached to them with 6 computers in. So it could be thinking about how you would integrate that into your teaching in some way. Oh, sorry, information communication technology. Sorry. Okay, should we move to step 2? Sorry. Well, one more question and then we'll move to step 2.
More about using inclusive practices.
Yes, so using inclusive practices, as I described earlier, things like ensuring in your classroom, if you're doing group work, that you are integrating children from different communities, that you're encouraging interaction between girls and boys, if that's appropriate. It may not be appropriate in your context, it would depend. It could be around ensuring that the children are thinking critically about the material that they're learning and relating that to their own experience in their home, a whole range of different things. Okay, step 2.
So what we'd like you to do next, and this is how we envisage the framework being used. So that first step of having an understanding of what those different professional behaviours are. And the second step, what we'd like to do is to map your competence onto the framework. So what you'll see there is different areas which point to initial awareness and then moving up in terms of competence. So what we'd like you to do is to work out where you might be for that particular competence on the circle, and that will come up. That will then show a profile of areas where you might want to develop. So if you could do that next bit of the exercise and discuss.
Can I just show you what this very good student in the front row has done? He's taken the framework and he's reflected on his competence in the different areas, and he's coloured in the arrows to the corresponding colours that he thinks match his level of competence. So for, I'm sure you won't mind, I asked his permission, for planning lessons, he felt that his his level of competence is integrated, that he has a high level of competency in this professional behaviour and consistently informs what he does at his school, at work. So he has coloured in the arrow on the solid red band on the wheel. So that shows that his level of competence is integrated for that competence. So if you do that for each one, you then get a map of your own competence and you're able to see where your strengths and weaknesses might be. So that's what we're aiming to get to. So maybe another minute, and then perhaps you can share with your partner. If you don't have time to finish, you can always come back to it later. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the next step. So the next step, then, you should now be able to identify what's your most important development priority. By looking at the map, by thinking and reflecting, what is the area that you need or you think you need to develop the most, and which is the area that maybe you could help other people develop in, perhaps, if your level is integrated or advanced, or leadership. Would anyone like to tell us what their priority is? Yep, there's a gentleman at the back with his hand up. Can we give him a microphone?
Assessing learning. That's
Okay, very important in India with the policy of CCE, Comprehensive Continuous Evaluation. Assessing the learning of your students is a really important skill to have. Yeah, absolutely. Another lady there with her hand up.
I also believe integrating ICT depends on the purpose of the classroom and the goal that we have. So how well that can gel well.
Yes, that's right. It may not be that relevant for you in your classroom at the current time.
All the time,
yes.
But whenever required and necessary, whenever it demands, we do integrate ICT in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. One more gentleman there at the back.
Taking responsibility for professional development. Because as a teacher, if you don't update yourself with the skills, so you lag behind. So it's a very important criteria.
Okay, thank you. And there's a lady here at the front.
I would think understanding the learner is important.
Okay, thanks. So, sorry, another lady at the front.
May I just elaborate on what she said about understanding the learners? Understanding the learners is important because if we don't start from there, we cannot see it in our teaching with them. Once we have understood them, what are their needs and what they require, we as a teacher can deliver the goods accordingly.
Absolutely, yeah. We need to put them at the centre, don't we? You're right. So, we'll move on, but the next step that you need to think about on here, the third step, is trying to think of one way that you could actually improve this particular area. We'll come back to this if we have time towards the end of the session. Is that okay, Sue? Yeah? Okay. So we'd like to move on to the next stage, which is thinking a little bit about the barriers to implementation. Again, we heard Professor Matthew this morning, and I think Professor Panda yesterday. One of the issues with CPD is not necessarily understanding it, although that is important, but it's how can we actually implement it in our contexts? And what are the challenges that we face every day in implementation? So we've chosen 4. There are many barriers. We've chosen 4. I think MC is going to tell us about the first 2.
Okay, so the first one, motivation, and really this is these are questions around these barriers, because what we hope and what we would like to show is how this framework can help provide solutions to some of these barriers. So motivation, and the key question around motivation is how do you motivate teachers who've got a lot of other demands on their time, who aren't given time by their institutions for CPD. There's no reward, there's no accountability if they do undertake CPD activities. So motivation is can be a big barrier. And time, usually the first thing people will say is, well, I don't have time for CPD. And so how do you, as Rama was saying this morning, how do we give teachers a legitimate space for their professional development, for reflection? And how do we encourage CPD to be mandated? Because if it is, then it will be given more of a priority and time will be made for it. So these are our 2 main barriers.
Okay, the other 2 barriers I wanted to pick up on were access and language. Starting with language, I think as English teachers, obviously extremely important for us. But so many of our colleagues are forced into situations where they have to teach English and they may not have been trained to teach English, they may not speak very much English themselves, they may have learnt English but not used it very regularly, they might not be used to speaking English, they may not have exposure to English or to language in their environment. There was an interesting study by Asar Pratam recently that said in Bihar only 20% of households have access to anything to read. Not just English, but anything. So in that kind of environment, how is it possible for a teacher to go in and start teaching English if they don't have the exposure or the access? So this is a huge challenge that we need to overcome, both for our teachers and our teacher educators. The second one around access, I think access is part of language as well, but it's also around access to digital resources, new innovations, could be online, could be radio, could be television. What kind of access do teachers have to CPD? What access do they have from, in terms of the institutional support? Do they have access to somebody in their school or in their cluster resource centre or their block resource centre who can help them with some of the challenges that they're facing? And if they don't, how do they get access? How do they get support? And a lot of teachers anywhere in the world are very geographically isolated from that resource, that help. They may be working in a very low-resourced school, which may be far away from the nearest town, nearest village. So how do they get access? So these are some of the huge challenges that we face as teacher educators all the time. I can see people nodding their heads, so I know the challenges that you all face as well. So how can we try and address some of these challenges?
So what we are hoping is that this framework can be used to become part of the solution to some of the challenges. And awareness raising is a key component of creating good CPD opportunities. And the framework can be used in a number of ways. One of the ways that we think it could be used, although obviously not at the moment, is in school development plans. So it becomes part of what the institution do, and I think this is something which is very much in the plans for the future, to start introducing it into institutions and encouraging this to be part of an institutional plan. And in terms of existing projects, so all those projects that I reviewed that have taken place, they've all included some CPD element, and particularly in the format of portfolios and diaries and learning journals, which have been extremely well received. But there is, again, the issue around motivation and awareness. And there was a lovely example yesterday. We had a CPD session, and a master trainer from Sirsa district in northern India, she was talking about an EU-funded project where, as part of the project, master trainers, they were given a CPD pack and a portfolio and a learning journal. And she took this pack and she put it away in her desk and didn't look at it, didn't know what it was for, didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't until somebody actually talked to her about learning journals and about how she could use that and introduced her to how it could be done, and had some conversations with her and showed her that she then realised the value of it, and then her motivation increased correspondingly. And I think also that's very much linked to confidence as well, and motivation and confidence are part of the same kind of package. So CPD has been used in projects, but it hasn't necessarily been explicit, and I think there's another example where it's been used and then afterwards people have been told, actually that is professional development. What you were doing, that was really fun and you really enjoyed it and you got so much out of it, that was actually professional development. So we're hoping that the framework can be part of a toolkit.
Yeah, so picking up from what MSC said, what we found in our work with states and with state governments across India is that we use a variety of different approaches. In certain situations, we try and make CPD explicit, and we introduce it as a key concept, and we discuss it, and we challenge it, and we talk about the barriers to implementation. And we tend to take this approach more with the administrators we work with people who work at the SCRTs, with people who already have a relatively clear understanding of what CPD is from a conceptual point of view, and they're able to talk about it in a more abstract way. But when we introduce CPD to teachers and teacher educators, we tend to do it in a more guided and implicit way, like helping them think through different tools that they could use, or exposing them to different tools, and then afterwards saying, that was a really interesting type of CPD that you just did. And they're like, oh, right, okay, that was CPD? Oh, no, now I know what CPD is. So we approach it in very different ways, depending on the stakeholder, the person that we're working with. And I think that helps raise awareness and help people accept it as another route and method to professional development. Another way that we've provided support for CPD is through different innovations using digital. Now, digital is not just online, it's not just websites. So the picture you see on the top left-hand corner is a photograph of our new Teaching English Radio for India, which is a series of programs of interviews with Indian teachers and teacher educators and head teachers that they share their challenges, their experiences, and the solutions that they have implemented that have made a difference to their own practice. And we've developed a workbook of materials to help teachers use the radio program to think more critically about their own practice, but also as a way to improve their listening skills and their own language skills. So this is being launched across Maharashtra, statewide, on the 24th of February, on Monday, and will be embedded in all of our projects from now on. And teachers can listen to radio through a radio player, through a mobile phone. There's a whole range of different ways that they can actually access radio. We have Facebook pages, and you might say, oh, my teachers don't use Facebook, my teachers don't have internet. Actually, our most popular Facebook page is made up of around 500 teachers from Assam. And those teachers created the Facebook page themselves. It's not a British Council Facebook page. It's a Facebook page created by them, for them, because they felt they needed it. And it's probably the liveliest, most interesting Facebook page that I've seen. If you Google it, you'll find it. Learn English Kids, we have a website of resources for teachers and for students. And we've taken the Learn English Kids website and we've mapped all of that content to the National Curriculum Framework, and we're now making that available on CD-ROMs for teachers. So you don't have to have the internet to be able to use it, and you can find your way through the content because it's linked to your own textbook and your own curriculum. So that's another initiative. So I think these are just some of the ways that you can use digital innovations in a way to support teachers, even if they may not have an email address or access to the internet at home. We have to rush, I think we have 5 minutes.
We've got like half a minute, I think. So, making the time. Yeah, speaking of time. Well, this is about, because time can be such a big barrier, this is about prioritisation, both on an individual level and on an institutional level, in the sense that if CPD does become mandated and rewarded, then the institution is far more likely to actually make the time for teachers to undertake CPD activity. But on a personal level, if you start to undertake professional development and you find it fulfilling, you're much more likely to continue on that journey and make the time. So it's always about prioritising. So if you really want to do something, you will actually find the time, which we are now running out of. One of the things...
Should we skip to the last?
Yes. Yeah. We don't actually have time to do this, but one of the things I got British Council staff to do when I first started working with them was to come up with an elevator pitch for what CPD is. So if you're convincing somebody in your institution, or you're convincing teachers, or you meet somebody and you've got them in the elevator for 3 minutes, and you've got to come up with an easy way of selling them CPD. So it was quite a really good exercise to do, but we don't actually have time to do it.
Can we not it's lunchtime now, can we not take 5 minutes, run over 5 minutes?
Oh, we can have 5 minutes. Okay, so yes, we would like you to do this. So we'd like you to imagine that you are about to go into this elevator with somebody and you want to convince them of CPD and of its value and of its uses. So if you could work perhaps with somebody just next to you, maybe someone opposite to who you've worked with before, and we'd like to hear your elevator pitch. You've got about 2 minutes to put one together. Starting now.
A sentence or two.
Yes,
just a sentence or two, that's it.
You're only in the elevator for a short amount of time, or depending on how many floors you might be
So
doing.
I would have to convince my boss to give me time to write an article about CPD. So what would I say to him if I was with him in a lift for 1 minute? That would be my challenge. What's your challenge? Who do you need to convince of the importance of CPD in your context? Think of that person, and then imagine you meet them. What would you say? So you've got a couple of sentences. What would you say?
Do we have anybody brave enough to come up here and tell us their elevator pitch? Oh, we have! Big round of applause.
Learning is a lifelong experience. That's all I know. Learning is a lifelong experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
It is a thought-provoking which leads to practice in our classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It is a self-auditing and self-evaluating process.
Okay, thank you.
We all know about Nandan, who helped us getting the unique identification numbers for all Indian citizens. I think he has achieved everything in his life, but still, when I saw his interview, he said that he still does some online courses to help himself. Learning is a continuous process.
So if someone like Nandan Nilekani still needs to learn, then of course, yes.
Well,
thank you.
I'll convince my boss by giving him stale water to drink. Stale water, because continuous professional development is fresh water.
I will say that CPD is to be alive, or it is the mark of a teacher who is alive. Just be in CPD.
I think it's necessary to be an independent teacher, otherwise you just have to follow.
I think with reference to educational administrators, I must say that inspection of the schools must be done properly.
Thank you.
I would tell my boss that if I develop as a teacher, my students are bound to get the benefit, and ultimately it's the institute which will shine.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. I can't imagine the life without CPD.
Okay, I think that's probably a good place
Because
to stop.
I always strive for identification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your... Oh, one more.
Before you thank us, I tell my Vice Chancellor that if I get this chance, I'll disseminate knowledge so other teachers also will improve. So you've got 10 teachers improving at the same time. If I improve, I can disseminate knowledge.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. If I could have the screen, just for our emails.
And I do have a prize. I have a prize for the best CPD elevator pitch, which I think must go to this lady who said it to help make your institute shine.
Thank you. Our emails are there. We would be very interested to know what you think about the framework, if you decide to use it, if you suggest any modifications or changes. And we would be very happy to send the slides to you so you could use this session with your own teacher educators or teachers if you felt it was appropriate. Thank you very much. Have a nice lunch.
Thank you very much.